Pellerin alongside my guy, Jahmai Webster, joining us from inside Fenway Park. I'm in the Nesson Fenway studio, and my guy, Jahmai, is rocking his sunglasses. He's enjoying the beautiful day at the ballpark. Good to see you, buddy.
You too, man. I'm glad you're setting the scene for some of our listeners who aren't watching the video aspect of this. You do a great job painting pictures, which is why you're in your role, because you're fantastic and like a Michelangelo with your words. So good to be with you, man.
I could be a radio guy. I could be a radio guy because I could paint the picture without the pictures. So that's something I'll keep in mind. But I wanted to talk about the week, how you're doing, and some of your travels on the road, because right now the Red Sox continue their homestand. As we record this, the Red Sox and White Sox are about to play their series finale. The Red Sox trying to stay in the mix over the final 3 weeks now of the season, and about 20 games to go. So let's start with your week. It's been kind of an up and down week, Jahmai, with the way the Red Sox had played, the 5-game losing streak, and then winning the first couple of games of this series, the return of Trevor Story. So there's been some up and down. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, it's been up and down, to steal your word. I mean, it's not much consistency to it. And then obviously the Red Sox going to Detroit, disappointing road trip, then going to New York, getting swept by the Mets. Not what you want or what you expect, but especially at this stage in the year. I mean, it's just the final month of the season. You really want to, try and get some stability as it relates to every aspect of the game, but they haven't been able to receive that. So I feel like it's up and down, man. And I still, perpetually glass half full guy. So I'm still trying to maintain some positivity about the whole thing. But it was looking bleak there for a moment after that Mets sweep. That's for sure. But I feel like the hope is brought back into the mix with the Chicago White Sox being here in town. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it is amazing how quickly things can turn too, right? Because, you go into the series against the White Sox. The Red Sox are 5.5 games back. They got 2 teams in front of them in the wild card standings. And you're thinking, man, this is not good. But to your point, you're bringing, the White Sox, who are on track to be the worst team in the modern era of Major League Baseball. And then you got teams around you that are losing, namely the Twins and the Royals playing that series in Kansas City. The Twins losing the first 2 games of the series. And all of a sudden, you go from 5.5 out to 4 out as we record this. So you gain a game and a half in 2 days. It's how quickly things can turn. But, let's go back to the road trip, Jahmai. And, the Red Sox obviously have had a rough second half of the year. And, they've had some good moments, the good moments being, splitting the series with the Orioles, winning the series over the Astros in that road trip, finishing with a winning road trip. And so you're feeling pretty good about things, despite the fact that they hadn't played their best baseball in the second half. Then they come back to Fenway Park, where they just haven't played well over the last few years now here at the ballpark. They lose that series to the Diamondbacks. They get swept. The Blue Jays come in for 5. They lose 2 out of 5 there. And then you go on this road trip. You win the first game of the series against the Tigers. Then you lose 5 straight. And, there was somebody who described it, and I can't remember, if it was from multiple reporters or one reporter, talking about it being like a funeral inside the Red Sox clubhouse.
It was multiple reporters, but I think the story you're referring to was Peter Abraham, who said it was like a funeral, which, I concur. Being inside the clubhouse, it certainly felt like somebody had died. And when I talk about somebody, I mean the season.
Right. And so I guess my question to you is that, is that, baseball's such a long season, man, and they go through losing streaks, and then, you just can't focus on the big picture. You just have to go day by day. But yeah, after that loss, is that the worst it's felt in the clubhouse all season long?
I would have to agree with that statement, and partly because now, you can't see the forest between the trees when you start out a season in April. But when you're in September, you're running out of days, you're running out of games. You start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, whether that's leading you to a postseason or whether you're going to be for another year sitting on the outside looking in. So to go into that week and not play as well as you had hoped and not, be able to find your offense, the thing that has pretty much carried you to this point in the year, that was disappointing. And then walking into that clubhouse, I'm seeing guys 10 minutes, 15 minutes after the game still in uniform. Rafael Devers being one of those players, just staring off into the abyss. And, it's uncharacteristic of him, which is why, post-game, just to set the scene for people, it's usually a free-for-all. Like, you grab who you want. You ask, if they're available to you in that moment. And you try to see if they have time, obviously, understanding, which is why there's a 10-minute cool-off period for people to kind of get their emotions and their thoughts in check. But for him, on a daily basis, he's usually the first guy to leave the clubhouse or be dressed. He might, later on or to this point in the year, he's getting a lot more treatment on those shoulders that has been ailing him. But for the most part, he's in and out pretty efficiently and pretty quickly, and he's on his way home. So for him to still be in full uniform that far after the final pitch was thrown was uncharacteristic of him. So, again, usually you try to just go up to the player and say, hey, you got a minute to talk to us. And that's the approach I usually take. But because he was sitting there, I decided that, I was going to ask the public relations staff, if they can grab him too, understanding that he also needs an interpreter. Or that's how he likes to communicate his thoughts at this point. So I asked, and they were like, all right, let's go see if he has a moment. So we're getting ready to walk over to talk to Rafi. And then the public relations staff was like, you know what? I think we should wait, actually. So I was like, okay, whatever you think is best. And then we kind of go back to standing in the middle of the clubhouse waiting to see what's going on. So this lasted for about 30 minutes. He sat there with the bat in his hand, with his thoughts kind of going through, seemingly playing over the game that just happened, because he had been struggling to this point still, finally starting to get out of that funk. And then he gets up, goes and leaves because he's getting drug tested. So about 45 minutes has passed by, finally comes back, starts to gather his stuff to take a shower finally. So now about an hour has passed. And now I'm looking at the bus times. It's like 10:30 first bus, 11 o'clock second bus. So he's already missed that first bus. So it's like 10:40 at night now. And he finally gets out the shower, gets dressed, and he leaves again, comes back. And then he's like, I don't have time. I got to go. He says that in Spanish. So then I'm like, are we doing this? Are we not? So then he leaves, obviously frustrated with what's going on. But I think fans and people alike, they'd like to hear from him, not because he's just a star, but also because he represents a lot of the leadership, or that people probably assume that he represents a lot of leadership on this team. We've understand over the last few years that he's a quiet leader, leads by example. But I think in instances like this, where we've seen in the past, guys like Xander Bogaerts, Mookie Betts, David Ortiz, people of that nature who kind of led a clubhouse or kind of been that person that is looked to, they've spoken up in those moments and, said, even if it's at the very least, hey, we got to play better. It starts with me. It's something we need to do. I still believe in this team. Those words might ring hollow to some people, but I think it's important to hear that person step up. So for him to kind of blow us off like that it just kind of spoke to, maybe because, again, haven't spoken to him about this, but it spoke to maybe the emotions that he was feeling in that moment and kind of where he thought the season was leading and, trying to find answers in search of how to turn things around. So to get back to the original point, I know a very long-winded answer, as always, on the Extra Time podcast, which is why we have extra time for moments like this. But, certainly felt like that was probably one of the tougher losses of the year.
Yeah, that's really insightful, though, about Rafael Devers, because it was a big story. And I remember when he signed his big deal, I think the questions were, hey, he hasn't really been in front of the cameras much in the past. He hasn't really demonstrated the leaders of the qualities of a quote unquote vocal type guy. Will this contract change that? And the answer to that question was no. And I think it's been pretty consistent since then, right? He's not a vocal leader. He goes about his business. He takes care of his own business, and he leads by posting up every day, right? Because we were talking to Pete Fatsi on the 310 to Left podcast about Rafi and about his struggles at the plate, and a lot of that is probably related to the injuries that he's dealing with, but also, the fact that, hey, like after that loss, reporters were waiting to talk to him. He ended up leaving and not talking to reporters. That obviously gained a lot of attention, but Pete Fatsi had basically said, look, this guy posts up every day. He's a warrior. He's tough, and that's how he leads. And I think, that's true. But I also think that he's learning that he has to sort of be in front of the cameras, during times like these, and he might not be the best, the most vocal leader, but at the end of the day, he's their best player, right? And I know Jaron Durant is emerging, but for a long period of time, Rafael Devers has been the best player on the Red Sox, and in good times and in bad times, the fans want to hear from somebody. They want accountability, And I think, and the guys that you mentioned, Xander, Mookie, and some of the others, Ortiz back in the day, those guys, it's not like those guys haven't had their moments where they've said, no, I'm not talking, right? I mean, Of course they have. And I think we just remember the times that they talked, after a tough loss, because they did it pretty often. But there were also times where they said no. And I think that we're looking at Rafi and we're saying, well, he didn't talk. And we're thinking, well, he hasn't talked much. And I think that's why it was the focus. It's because he hasn't talked a lot in the past. Those other guys have talked a lot in the past. Rafi hasn't. And then when he doesn't during a time like this, I think
I'm
it's
on live with a podcast.
Hey, tell your fans to pipe down, okay? I mean, we got some work to do over here. My God.
Kutter Crawford, man. Kutter Crawford chirping me right now. Tell him
you want to come on? Tell me. Come on.
We'll get you on as a guest to the Extra Time podcast here pretty soon. We'll get you on as a guest to the Extra Time podcast with Jahmai Webster, Sophia Yerkevich, Adam Peller. He said if I got any extra time.
Nice. Very well done. Very well done.
Thanks, Kutter.
Very well done. Thanks, Kutter. I appreciate it. I always love guest appearances.
Yeah, it's fantastic, man. That's amazing.
But anyway, that was just to sort of put a bow on the Rafael Devers situation.
Yeah, and actually, I want to bring up one other point, if I may, actually, and it's not just in the times of when things are down that Rafael Devers doesn't speak. He's actually maintained pretty consistently over the course of this year, even when he's done great. I mean, there's times where he was going through this year earlier in the season where he had the games of consecutive home runs, where he was continuing to rewrite the history books for Red Sox hitters. And I think it was about the sixth game, and he accomplished the goal, and he turned down a walk-off interview on the field. He said it wasn't my day, and I actually had a conversation with him about this, and I was like, Rafi, man, what's going on? People want to hear from you. They want to hear what you have to say about, what was going through your mind, what was your thought process, what was your approach against these pitchers facing this history. I said, why are you saying no to me outside on the field? And he's like, some days I just don't feel like it. Some days I feel like it's my day, and other days I feel like it's not. And I'm like, so what describes it as your day then? If you hit a walk-off? He's like, maybe. We'll see. But that's kind of the approach that he's taking. And it's crazy to think about, because you think that, especially in those moments, because we're talking to you because something great has happened. You've done something that you have felt like was a big contributor to the team's win and their success. And we only do it after victory. So you feel like the emotions are at an all-time high. But to even say no in that moment, it kind of speaks to the excellence, I guess, that he requires of himself. And even if he's having a good game, maybe on the outside looking in, he's not feeling like I've done enough. So I think there's a lot of pressure that comes with him, and just speaks to the consistency at which he has declined speaking over the course of this year, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure that comes along with being a star player, right? The pressure to perform, the pressure to be accountable in front of the media. There's a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, getting back to the Red Sox, there's a window here. And I know the series finale against the White Sox is yet to be played here at Fenway Park. So we'll see how that plays out. But in terms of the schedule moving forward, you got 20 games left. You got the finale against the White Sox, all right? And then you got a tough stretch of division games against the Orioles here at Fenway, the Yankees, and then the Rays after that. But then you have an opportunity. If you can hang around, Jahmai, all right? If you can play pretty good baseball over this stretch, you got the Twins coming to Fenway Park after that in what could be a huge series. I know their schedule isn't as tough over the next 10. I mean, they got to wrap up things against the Royals, right? Best case scenario, right? By the time this podcast drops, we could be talking about the Red Sox being 3 back of the Twins, okay? So you could either be 3 back or you could either be 5 back, depending on how things play out today, right? But if you're able to stay within that 3-4 game range heading into the series against the Twins at Fenway, you have an opportunity there. Now, you do have the Tigers and Mariners who are in the mix. As we record this, only a half game behind the Red Sox.
Nipping at your heels.
Yeah, but, if you can keep them, at arm's length, and then, again, I know there's a lot of what if, right? If you can do this, if you can do that. But you could have a meaningful series. You could have a meaningful series here at Fenway Park next weekend. Oh, my gosh. What's going on?
I'm afraid of bees. If you ever seen the movie My Girl, I've never been stung.
Yes.
And that Macaulay Culkin scene, literally, it is seared into my brain. So anytime I see a bee, which just came over here, I freak out, man. Sorry. Back to baseball talk.
I mean, I think listen, I want you to take care of yourself out there. That's my first concern, right? My first concern is your safety. My second concern is making sure that that you contribute to the podcast. So now
this
that the
is why
bee's
I
gone,
don't do this out in the elements because of this very factor. I can't control, my environment.
Yeah. All right, but anyway, we could have meaningful baseball here at Fenway Park.
Yeah,
it's still to come.
That's the hope. That's certainly the hope. My fingers are crossed for that, and I hope that next time we're doing this, we're talking about a team that is either right there on the doorstep or still with high hopes for what they can accomplish right in front of them. So we'll see.
So, Jahmai, we talked about the road trip not going well, 1-5, 5-game losing streak. You were in Detroit. And you were in
goodness.
New York. Okay, so obviously New York, being in New York is great. And the big city, it's a lot. It has a lot to offer, to say the least. We had an earlier podcast, earlier this year with Sophia, talking about some of our favorite road cities. And I think, some cities came to mind. Like I really like Vancouver. Traveling with the Bruins. I like going to Washington D.C. There's some other cities that you mentioned as well, and then Sophia mentioned Detroit. And we all kind of raised our eyebrows.
It was a head scratcher. It was a head scratcher, no doubt.
We've both been there. Yeah. We're both, and we're kind of like, all right. And she, I don't know, she said that it was an up-and-coming city, and there was a lot of, shops.
Vibrancy, gentrification going on, all this fantastic stuff that brings cities into the forefront of wanting to be one of those hot spots for vacation.
So personally, I didn't see that. Last time.
You know what? And I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
You were just there. So did you see any of that?
I got to tell you, AP, to our loyal listeners who have been with the Extra Time podcast from the very beginning, who saw us scoff at Sophia for her Detroit hot take, having just been there. Wow, man. Can I tell you, I'm ready to make a complete 180 on this Detroit take. It's not so hot a take anymore. It is one of the more underrated cities in the American League. And I got to say, I was absolutely blown away. And just for the record, our girl has been vindicated after my latest experience with Detroit, Michigan. And let me tell you why, man.
Okay.
This is Dave Dombrowski's legacy, of course, because we don't stay in the city. I'm not sure where you guys stay when you're with the Bruins, but we don't stay in the heart of downtown. We stay in the suburbs, out in Birmingham.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a little bit of a trek inside, but this particular area, I felt like I was on an episode of The Real Housewives of Detroit or something. I mean, I'm talking about beautiful people walking around every exotic car you can think of in the neighborhood. The houses are incredible. And I'm just like, Detroit. I was unfamiliar with your game. I'm sorry. To quote that one meme that's going around. So sneaky good city, sneaky good restaurants, sneaky good food. And listen, I had Little Caesars pizza for the first time in probably about 20 years. And oh my God, how incredible it was. The buttery crust. I'm talking about this is a ballpark experience, by the way. The
Yeah.
buttery crust, and mind you, I was starving at the time, so you could have given me a hot dog that had fallen on the ground, and I would have eaten it and felt like, hey, this is fantastic.
All
But
right. Well, that
Detroit,
doesn't do much for pumping up
it,
Little Caesars, but all right, go ahead, continue.
but I'm just saying, it was a mind blowing experience, and I was blown away by her take at the time, and now even more so with my latest experience. Detroit, I'm not ready to say top 5 cities because I still got New York, LA, Chicago, Toronto up there, but it has now snuck into the top 10 for road cities for me. And yes, to answer the question, right here on your screen, Detroit, you are underrated, but not anymore because I'm joining the Sofia Jurkstovich train and I'm on top of Detroit like white on rice, man. It was an amazing place, and not one of those cities I'm ready to have an off day in yet, but if we're going to do a 3-game series, with some day games sprinkled into a night where I get an opportunity to experience the city, sign me up.
Yeah, all right. So you wouldn't put Detroit in the category of one of your favorite destinations. You would
Not
probably you'd put it in maybe like a box, a bucket of potential. There's some potential there because I got to say, to hear you say I'm not ready to spend one of my off days there isn't a ringing endorsement, but you brought up some good points. I haven't experienced anything outside of Detroit Metro at this point in my travels.
See, that's a mistake. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
You got to get into the burbs, man. You got to get into the burbs. That's where the experience lies.
Yeah.
And it's happening out there. It is happening. I am telling you. You can ask anybody who's on the trip. Ask Will Flemings.
Right.
Ask Loomer. Loomer will concur. Steve Tagarellis, our photographer, he was on the trip as well. I'm telling you, ringing endorsements, 5-star all around.
So Tags Travels, just so people know, the photographers, we have a group of 4 photographers who rotate on road trips, and they travel during Red Sox and Bruins season. So they get to see the same cities, but perhaps different locations based on where the teams stay. And so I'll have to talk to Tags because if I'm not mistaken, he might have been with me this past season.
This conversation came up. Yep, at Little Caesars Arena, which is right over there by Comerica. So this conversation came up, and he is on board. I'm telling you, you might have to have him as a guest on the Extra Time podcast when Sophia comes back, just to concur this point. And just give our girl her flowers. Let's give Sophia her flowers, man, because we crushed her. We absolutely obliterated her. And I feel bad now because she's been vindicated.
You know why I remember that too, Jahmai, is because we were in Detroit on New Year's Eve, but we made it out of Detroit to Columbus for New Year's Eve. Now, granted, we're going from Detroit to Columbus. No disrespect to Columbus, it wasn't exactly, going to New York or LA or any of those spots for New Year's Eve.
Like it wasn't my latest holiday stretch where I was in Miami on the 4th of July, and then later that night I was in New York City. So it wasn't that. The Columbus to Detroit was not that.
No. But anyway, so all right. Well, I'll tell you this. I'll keep an open mind when it comes to my next visit to Detroit. I haven't looked closely enough at the schedule to see when that trip is and what it looks like around the trip. Because in hockey, we're only there. We're in and out, right? There are times where we get to the city that we're playing in. The night before the game and sometimes 2 nights before the game. So the 2 nights before the game can sometimes lead to an opportunity to explore a little bit. So I'll have to see where it lands. But anyway, all right. Well, that's good to know.
We'll pick this back up once you experience Detroit again. For the next time, we'll pick it back up and with your open mind, and we'll see kind of where you land on that. But this is a lesson to us all in life that Sophia, she might be onto something when she says things. And, this is a lesson to me to keep an open mind and to continue that because I was closed-minded. I'm here to say it right now, folks. I apologize. The girl is vindicated. Detroit, sneaky hot city.
Speaking of Sophia and the Bruins, as we record this, the Bruins' first preseason game is 2 weeks from today, which is crazy. It's on its way Training camp. So training camp in hockey is much shorter in terms of the turnaround from the start of training camp to the first exhibition game. So the Bruins will start training camp not this week, but the week after, and then they'll play their first exhibition game just a few days later. It's a slate of 7 preseason games, most of which you can see on NESN. But I don't know, did you get to meet Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov when they were at the ballpark on Friday when they threw out the first pitch?
Yeah, they were here and the wind is picking up, but I did not get to meet them. I did see their first pitches, though, and we replayed it on the telecast. And, it's funny because when people don't have the visual evidence, the stories that they tell about how excellent they were, it tracks because I think it was Elias, or maybe it was Nikita,
yeah.
Who said that his first pitch was right there in the strike zone and he nailed it. And then we run the video and both wide on the outside. It was pretty hilarious, but I didn't get a chance to meet those guys. But man, monsters! And I think Lou Merlone put them already on that top line with David Pastrnak, and he mentioned that
Yeah.
still yet to be determined, but hopefully I'm able to play with Pasta.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how the lines develop. It's always interesting, and even more interesting now that you got Elias Lindholm in the mix. Obviously, a top 6 setter. You have Charlie Coyle centering a line as well with Pavel Zacha. Looks like he's going to move over to a wing. But not to get too technical about the Bruins season and what's ahead. But you know what I really appreciated about Nikita Zadorov? So Zadorov, for those who don't know, but I mean, I think most fans who listen to this follow the Bruins at least casually. Oh my gosh, another B. This has been
The B is back.
This is the last time you're outside, buddy. I fear for your life.
There he is. You see him. He's hanging out up there, dude. You see him.
do.
You see him up there.
What kind of cologne are you wearing?
Oh man, I gotta think it's the expensive stuff. I think
You
it's
wearing honeysuckle?
You know what? Actually, what is it? No, today this is my Mercedes-Benz cologne. Today,
Do you have honeycomb
put it
cereal
on.
for Mercedes? I'm sorry, Mercedes-Benz cologne.
Yeah. Hey man, listen, we can get into that next. I'm telling you, Mercedes-Benz, they make a cologne. It's a collector's item, limited edition. They give it to you with the car, and I'm telling you, this is one of the best scents that I've worn before in my life. I get a lot of compliments on this, dude. I'm telling you. I'm gonna see you in a little bit. I'm gonna let you smell it, man. We're very confident. We're very confident in our manhood, so I'll let you get close, man. Take a whiff.
They give it to you with the car.
Yeah. Well, listen,
man.
it's not mine. All right, it's my wife. So I make sure that she's taken care of.
I was gonna say here in the extra time podcast, we try to be relatable.
Listen,
talking about the Benz.
it's not high end. I'm gonna tell you that. All right. It's just a vehicle with a name, but certainly open to sponsorships. So if you want me to drive it and you want me to drive that next big thing, please reach out to @Webster on TV on all your social handles, and I'll be happy to pick up the car for the season and drive it.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent. But anyway, so I was talking about Nikita Zadorov. So he's 6'6", big 6'6" defenseman. Bruins signed him in the offseason along with Lindholm. Zadorov's going to be a part of the top 4 pairing. And, he's obviously a big guy with his last name starts with Z. And
he didn't want to take the nickname, though.
Exactly, and that's what I appreciated about him. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
I appreciate him saying, "Hey, look, I don't want to. The Big Z nickname for me is dead. I am no longer Big Z." Yep. So I appreciated that, and I also appreciated this, Jahmai, during his introductory availability with the Boston media. He was talking about Boston. He was asked about being in Boston, what he knew about the city, and he went in on the sports in town and the rich history. And he also talked about the Red Sox rivalry as well, being the best of it, which I really appreciated. This is a guy that, I don't know how closely he follows baseball. I'm assuming not very closely. So what I'm assuming is that he did his homework.
Yeah, he's done his research.
And I appreciate that. That's something you can appreciate from an athlete who's ready to embrace the culture of the sports culture, anyway, of the city.
Yeah, you certainly love to hear that, knowing people with a little bit of background, because, we've seen how the athletes in this city have embraced each other over their championship runs and playoff runs, and that's super cool to see. So to see him here at Fenway being a hockey guy, quote unquote, and still kind of, appreciating the America's pastime, and having a working knowledge for it, at least, one that you can have a coffee table conversation. I thought was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was. So I appreciate that from him. I think it's going to be an interesting season from the Bruins' perspective. A lot of turnover, but bringing core pieces back. Jeremy Swayman, obviously, we're waiting on that contract situation to play out. Linus Olmark traded to Ottawa. You got Jonas Korpisalo as the backup. Swayman's going to carry a heavier load. It's something that you're going to have to watch as the season goes on, and to see how these new pieces fit, to see who emerges in terms of young players and other veterans that that they signed to contracts in the offseason. But it's my favorite time of year, man. It really is. I love this time of year because again, as we record this, the Patriots are kicking off their season today. You got the Red Sox still playing meaningful baseball games. You got the Bruins training camp that's right around the corner. The Celtics will be up right after that. You got the Revs that are still playing. And it's fun, man. It's all sports all the time. There's no better place, man, than the city of Boston during the fall. I will die on that hill.
I mean, I can think of about 2 other Caribbean cities or tropical environments that I'd be in during the fall, but that's a whole nother episode of the Extra Time Podcast when we get a moment, man.
Yeah, I know. Well, I guess that's a good way to close things out, man, because we'll close it on a positive note about Boston being the best place in the world during the fall.
Yeah.
So I like
Let's do that.
That's good, man. Well, I had a lot of fun. I appreciate it as always, and I'm glad that you're safe because I was worried about that bee.
I'm worried about this bee. There's all kind of animals that come over here in the camera well during games that people don't seem to realize. It's all part of the hazards of the job. Not only do you got to watch out for the baseballs, you got to watch out for the wildlife.
I can't believe you called Kutter Crawford an animal, man. That's messed up. I hope it doesn't get back to all sorts of animals coming up to you during the podcast. But hey, listen.
Hopefully not.
Hey, good to see you, man. As always. Is he coming on? Because we'll spend a couple more minutes if he wants to come over.
No, he's within an earshot. I'm gonna tell him, hey, we'll get you next week, Kutter. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna try to get him on here. He may be our first guest on the Extra Time Podcast.
All right. There you go. All right, Jahmai, always a pleasure. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
All right, man. Sounds good. Talk to you. Peace.